Good evening, everyone. Guys, I'm going to give you an update today on what's been happening in Ukraine, and this is going to be counter to what most mainstream media outlets are portraying. But just before I go on to this, guys, I want to talk about the situation in the United Kingdom and the impending doom that we're all facing. Now, you only have to switch on the news, and it seems like every 2 minutes there's a stabbing, houses set on fire, people being attacked, police officers being attacked, children being attacked. It is just literally out of control in the UK and in the United Kingdom at the moment. Now, people are blaming social media for this. Now, and I get why they're blaming social media. I really do. And by people, I mean the government. And I can kind of see that argument. But what I will say is social media is to blame for people seeing what's happening and seeing media manipulation and media lies. And that is fueling more hatred and more unsettled and more anger, because what we had, and I've seen this with my own eyes, and lots of people are coming out with this now and saying the exact same thing. They're watching something on the TV and the mainstream media are saying X, Y, and Z, and then somebody's got a camera phone and they're filming the actual events, and people are thinking, well, hang on a minute, that's not what happened at all. Or then the mainstream media will delete that post and it'll just be vanished, and it'll just vanish and it'll go away and it'll never be seen again. Now, you've got all these things in the United Kingdom at the moment just moving forwards, and it seems like the pace is actually accelerating. Now, if it wasn't for social media platforms and, places like X, and guys, I'm still not convinced on, I've never met Elon Musk. I don't know him. I don't know any people who know him. What I will say is I'm not convinced of anyone's authenticity at the moment. I think he's doing a good thing, but I'm also confused as to how he managed to be in control of Twitter or X. I don't know how that happened. I really don't. He just went over there with a ton of money and bought it. I find that hard to believe. So my mind isn't made up yet. I don't know. I don't know who he is. I don't know whether he's a charlatan, whether he's a shill, whether he's US government and they're trying to do some switch and bait maneuver. Like when you're selling a second-hand car, you put pictures of another car, the guys come out and then they've got the old one. They're like, no, this is the car you was going to buy. Anyway, they're out there, so they might buy it anyway. Anyway, guys, my mind isn't made up on Elon Musk. And I think people who are, championing Elon like this, some sort of, this free speech immortal that people are claiming him to be. Because what happens is when you put your faith in people, when you put your faith in one particular person, you follow them blindly. I mean, look what's happening at the moment in the United States. We're getting a huge polarization where people are, people who are now following Kamala Harris, and they're saying, Kamala Harris is the best, she's the best president America's ever had. And you're like, well, hang on a minute. She's never been president. So, you're getting this huge polarization, and anything that somebody who's on, whether it's the left or the right, we'll just use those instances for now. Let's use Farage, for example, in the United Kingdom. He's quite a right-leaning guy. Well, he is a right guy, and we're going to get to a stage where anything Farage says is just going to be taken as gospel, and nobody's going to be giving it, any objective thought. Whereas if things are not polarized, people can say, oh, yeah, well, you know what? I do think, whether it's Trump or Kamala Harris or Nigel Farage, or even if you're in the absolute minority and you support, I can't even remember his name, Keir Starmer, you become polarized and you think, okay, right, whatever they say, we'll follow it. But if you've got objectivity, you can say, right, okay, I voted for this guy, I support this party, or I support this ethos or this way. But kind of what you're saying is like, no, I'm not going along with that. So that's what happens when you get polarization. And the further these poles move apart, the closer to this mass civil unrest that we're at. I mean, we've already seen the cracks in the United Kingdom, and these things are Guys, be under no illusion, these things are going to erupt even further as soon as the end of the year comes, particularly if we have a cold winter, because we've been blessed for the last, well, since Putin invaded Russia, we've been blessed with relatively warm winters. So we've not had to put the heating on. That's not sent the fuel price up. When we've managed to, we've managed to scrape through. Guys, everybody I speak to is saying the same thing, cost of living, price of food, price of everything, tax hikes. One of my friends who I speak to quite a lot, he's just been told at work that, they've said, look, we're going to have to lay people off, otherwise the company can't function anymore. So, you're seeing all this, all this civil unrest, boiling up. And when this goes, guys, it's going to be a lot worse, because if people think, okay, right, if I go to this protest, I'm going to get arrested, I'm going to get arrested and sent to jail for 10 months if I put a Facebook post on something. People are just they're going to explode, and they're going to think, right, I'm going to prison anyway. So, what for it? It doesn't matter. And that's the reality of the situation. And I've seen this in so many different countries when people get pushed and sidelined and nobody listens to people. That's just an inevitability of this. And the way this government are treating this whole situation is kind of pushing everybody down that road. Anyway, guys, I do apologize. I said this was going to be an update on Ukraine, and it is. So, if you were to look at mainstream media at the moment, you would see, Ukraine's taking ground, Ukraine's giving the biggest drone attack into Russia, Ukraine's holding more ground, Putin can't take back Kursk. And that is, all of those media articles are true. But the reality of the situation is them losing exponentially more ground than they're actually gaining in the Kursk region. Now, I'll just share this really quickly, guys, and then once I've shared this with you, I'm going to read a message that my friend sent me, who's actually in Ukraine at the moment. Oh, wrong one. I'm totally monging it. My internet started working again. This one, right. So I'm just going to briefly go on to this, guys. What is happening in Ukraine's east front line as Putin's forces advance? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky admits the situation in the eastern region of the front line has become difficult, guys, and that is an understatement to say the least. While Kiev's forces have been fighting inside of Russia, Ukrainian forces are advancing through Russia's Kursk region. And guys, they are advancing, but their advances are not what they're, the reality of the situation on the ground is they've not managed to push as far as the media would have you believe. Pushing through the Kursk region as their historic cross-border assault, concentrating their resources on this attack, but Moscow's forces are doing the same in eastern Ukraine. So what you have there then is, the Ukrainians, guys, and nobody can take anything away from what Ukraine have managed to do. They have managed to, deal a blow to Putin, who thought his borders were indestructible. But, the Ukrainians have managed to push through. Oh, excuse me, guys. The Ukrainians have managed to push through with a lot of help from what we can see from Western fighters and a lot of help from Western weapons. They have managed to push through. They're hold down in the Kursk region. The Kursk region's been heavily evacuated. And it looks like, that whole region's been fortified. Now, let me read you the message from my friend he just messaged me back, actually. Let me just read you this from, so I asked him, I said, how's things going in Ukraine? We had blah, 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 blah. Hang on. Right. So he said that Ukraine are losing more villages in the east at an alarming rate. Things are not looking good. Pokrovsk will be lost in a matter of weeks, maybe even less. So that's what he's saying. That's, from the horse's mouth, straight from Ukraine. Now, I'm going to show you now what he actually means. And I'll show you this war map. And you can see in real time what's happened. Where are we? That one. Okay, so this is the village he's talking about, Pokrovsk. And this here, look, this is the date, 6th of the 8th, 24. So this is the day that the Ukrainians invaded Russia. So this is how it looked. This was the region, how it looked back then. Since the Ukrainians have pushed into Russia, I'm just going to skip through, and each time I click this, it's going to represent another day on the ground. So you can see there's been huge gains here, and it looks like every day there's parts of this region being taken. Now, what they're trying to capture is this area here, because it's got a main supply route here, which supplies obviously this road up here and this road up here. And there's also a rail hub in there, if we can zoom in, I think. Somewhere, I hope, or I'll just be embarrassed. Yeah, there we are, guys. So there's this rail hub here, this rail network that one goes north and one goes south, and that's the reason they're trying to control that area, Pokrovsk. Now, Pokrovsk, they've come out, the Ukrainians, and they've given people, I think they did give people like 2 weeks to evacuate that region. Now, what does this mean? Kind of means they're telegraphing that is going to fall. Now, if this falls, this is going to be a massive. I'm not going to go back to it. This is going to be a massive blow to that whole region, because remember, that controls the access routes and the resupply routes. So the Ukrainian forces in those other regions, they'll be limited now to the supplies that they can get in. And once you limit people's supplies, you can do this. So you can do the pincer movement, which is basically you go from the bottom, you go from the top, you try and close in, and then you encap. Well, what do? There's a word for it. Surround. It's not surround, and you can lay siege to the guys in the middle, and then the guys in the middle, you don't really have to worry about them. You can just let them fester and just leave them, because you've gone around them. Now, this is all coming about as a backdrop of the mainstream media are reporting on Ukraine making advances in Russia. Now, Ukraine are making advances in Russia, but nowhere near like the advances that the Russians are making in Ukraine. Any talks of peace talks or peace negotiations, they're just not happening. They are off the table. They're not happening. They're done. It's a done deal. It's not going to happen. Nobody's interested in peace talks at the moment. So if you remember back when the French said, and this is what they said, in fact, I'll try and talk while I'm searching for this, guy, see if I can do it. So the French, they said that they would aid Ukraine if let's search for that, guys. Sorry. French military trainees would be a legitimate target for Ukraine. Right, I can't find the thing. Right, I can't find it, guys. I will find it. I'll put a link in the description. I thought I'd be able to find it easy. But basically, French President Macron, he come out and he said he would put French boots on the ground in Ukraine if the Russians made significant gains in the east. I think if the Russians managed to take this village, this town, well, I think it's a city, this settlement of Pokrovsk, then I don't think anybody can argue that the Russians have not made significant grounds in the east. That would then put the pressure on Macron, and and Zelensky would be saying, "Hey, Macron, bro, can I have some soldiers?" You kind of said you would, and then that's going to make that's going to give the whole political dilemma then of things that can potentially happen in the future. Because remember, when a political leader says something and he's big and brash about it, and he's out there, he's sticking his chest out and beating the war drum, if somebody calls those cards, then they need to be shown. Now, that's what I feel could be happening very, very soon. And like they said, the actual Ukrainian government have said to the people in, guys, I'm slaying this word. It's Pokrovsk. Is it Pokrovsk? Let me just check. Yeah, in Pokrovsk, they've said, right, okay, you guys have got 2 weeks to evacuate yourselves. Get out, come to Kiev, or evacuate to another city. My friend's saying, Pokrovsk could fall within, a couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of days, because of the push and the relentless push by the Russians. And they're not just making ground in that region. They're making ground in small amounts all over that front line. So although, yes, it's great and it's fantastic for the Ukrainians that they're making ground, the reality is they're losing it at a greater at a greater rate than they're taking it. And again, what does this mean to us in the UK? What does this mean to us in Europe? You know, and we all sit here in the safety and we watch these things on TV and tote and say, oh, it's terrible. Oh, yeah, it's terrible what these guys are going through. Unless you've been there and you've witnessed these things firsthand and witnessed the desperation of people clearing their flats or apartments out that have just been bombed. Imagine this, guys, and I've seen this with my own eyes. You've got blocks of apartments that have been bombed by the Russians. You've got people trying to clear out whatever personal belongings they can from these houses. You've also got the media lined up taking pictures, trying to take pictures of their face and trying to get this on camera. Now, with the media, it's a double-edged sword. You kind of want to give these people, you kind of want to say, right, guys, show these people some respect. Let them get their belongings in peace without you clicking those pictures in their face. But if the media don't do that, the rest of the world will not see what's happening. And this is kind of, you can tie this back to what's happening in the UK at the moment. With social media companies. Social media companies are reporting on things that are happening in towns and cities, in local communities, and then they're putting them on the internet. If they weren't putting these things on the internet, people wouldn't see the depth of depravity in the United Kingdom. So going back to Ukraine, unless you've been there and seen these things and seen old ladies trying to gather the goods in a little bag and they're just shell-shocked, And it's very surreal when you look at these like a block of flats that's just been bombed. You look at this gaping hole or the front of it's taken off, and you can see all these different individual lives and how close they live to each other, and the differences in furniture and decorations and settees and TVs and all the rest of it. How they've painted their apartments, and they've all lived so close to each other, literally, a couple of inches between each other in these Soviet blocks of flats. And until you've seen that, and until you understand what's actually happening, it's very difficult for us to judge or make judgment or comment with our Western eyes. And that's what you see on the TV with a lot of these commentators. They've never been outside of London, and they've always had and they've always been part of that neoliberal, champagne socialist kind of movement that's heavily subverted by, Leninist Marxism. Anyway, guys, so I'm waffling on. The jux of this, guys, I was waffling on a tangent. Yeah, so the jux of this video is the Ukrainians, although they're making ground, they're losing a lot more ground. It's only going to be a matter of time before they take that settlement of Pokrovsk. When they take that settlement of Pokrovsk, I think Zelensky's going to call his cards to Macron. He's going to say, hey, Macron, bro, yeah. Remember when you said I could have some, boots on the ground? I'm not going to do a French accent. Well, we kind of need those boots on the ground. And then Macron's going to have the decision then. Is he going to send them or not? Are they already there? What's going to happen? And that's the reality of the situation as we are now. Like I said, this could happen in days. The town could fall in days. The town could fall in weeks. The Ukrainians have been given 2 weeks to evacuate. So that's kind of the time frame that we're on at the moment. And again, this time frame would fit perfectly into that Andrew Bridgen interview where he said war full time will be declared. What did he say? July, August, maybe a little bit later. Guys, I don't know if any of this is true. I don't know if it could all be absolute cobbles water, but this is my opinion, so let me know what you guys think. I am going to mag to grid.